Fall of 2012 saw the release of Ghouls Rule, directed by Mike Federle and Steve Sachs, and written by Ted Zizik and Mike Montesano, and produced by Tina Chow and Ira Singerman. With a runtime of 72 minutes, it's Monster High's first full-length film. For this distribution, Mattel partnered with Universal Studios. IMDb gives it a rating of 6.1 out of 10, with 28.6 of the ratings being a 10 out of 10. After a quick credit to Universal Studios and a reminder this was made during their 100th anniversary, the standard intro plays with Fright Song. Then we zoom out on a notebook surrounded by Halloween paraphernalia. We open in on Frankie's and other students watching a black and white film about the annual horrors of Halloween for monsters and other fear-mongering. Frankie is shaken by what she sees and can't believe it when she tries comparing it to the image of Halloween in her head that magazines have created for her. Side note, but this one guy looks a lot like Farnham from the previous movie. Other students aren't too concerned about the holiday, with students like Deuce speaking up about how nothing ever happens.
Mr. Rotter, dude. Sir, dude.
Mr. Rotter tries reminding them that anything can happen. Frankie interrupts and says that her magazines say Halloween is a fun time.
To run and hide? Normie's coming to get us?
What?
Cleo tells her that Normie magazines lie all the time.
Hottie to hottie in 4 easy steps. Please, you're either born with it or you're not.
Mr. Rotter tells them they will discuss things more tomorrow and disappear. Next, we focus on Jackson walking through the halls when he bumps into Manny, who calls him a normie. Jackson isn't having it and reminds Manny that he is part monster too. Which, like, when I was younger, I was on Jackson's side. But I get the monster is not fully seeing him as one of them. He does benefit from the fact that he can suppress his monster half after all. And he does seem to prefer walking around as a normie.
That's weird.
Anyway, he transforms into Halt to remind Manny that he is indeed part monster. Halt gets very intimate with Manny, thanks him, and runs off singing.
Ha! Gay!
Draculaura, Claude, and Claudine are walking and talking, with Drac excited for an upcoming double date where she's trying to set up her cousin with Claudine. Claudine, on the other hand, is not excited, visibly not happy to go on a date with some guy she's never met. When Frankie comes up, she asks them for advice, and Draculaura tells them how normies were the reason they fled her old home. They mistook her eating a tomato for blood, which the two do not look alike at all. Frankie is not reassured by the story, and Claudine offers to have a slumber party with the ghouls, so they'll be safe at home. Claude asks if they're going to tell scary normie stories.
About the farmer who steals the souls of the mole! I got it!
Deuce and Cleo are talking about the same thing, with Cleo saying she does believe the normies are not to be trusted, her father having taught her such things. Deuce tries talking sense into her as we cut to the three main ghouls walking. Claudine is telling Frankie there is nothing to worry about when Spectra floats up to them. She interrupts to show them that the school is being egged and toilet papered by normies who throw eggs at Cleo before driving off. We cut to Rebecca meeting Rochelle and Venus to gossip in the creepateria. I love seeing them together. It reminds me of the books that center on their friendship. Venus also gets a speaking role. Everyone is talking about the incident. Torlai is impressed and wants payback, and Cleo agrees for once. Miss Bloodgood advises the students not to retaliate. Spectra bumps into Frankie and Abby. She's researching a story, shocking I know, that she discovered in the catacombs that involved the history of Halloween. Abby picks up a map Spectra dropped that reveals a way through the catacombs to the Hall of Halloween. They ask Operetta for help navigating the maze below the school.
Operetta, please help us. You're the only one who knows their way around this place.
We get a montage as they are led through the tunnels. And are they skipping class to go on this adventure? Or is this an after-school activity? At the end, they're shocked to find a huge banquet hall. Frankie steps on a button that activates a fireplace and turns on an animatronic skeleton ghoul who begins telling them the truth of Halloween.
Halloween was originally created to honor and praise all of the monsters of the world.
How it's a time for monsters and normies to come together, for monsters to go around performing tricks and getting treats. It's also a time to wear your most fashionable outfits to parties, as we see dresses projected on display. They're obviously meant for specific characters, and this raises so many questions, none of them answered. Poor Spectra and Operetta must have known this wasn't about them, when they saw nothing in their style or colors. Abby eats some long-expired candy. The animatronic goes on about how normies dress like monsters and carve jack-o'-lanterns. The ghouls leave to tell the others, but when they arrive, they see the normies struck again. And when Heath stupidly grabs one of the pumpkins, it activates a trap that throws more pumpkins. Abby protects Heath from getting pummeled. The other Mansters try emasculating Heath because he was saved by a girl, which is so sad and accurate.
Heath just got saved by a girl!
Oh, man.
Miss Bloodgood orders an emergency assembly in the auditorium. When Halt's phone dies, he reverts to Jackson, who runs off suspiciously.
That's weird.
In the auditorium, Bloodgood tells the students to stay safe and even hide their monsterness from normies. The students are shocked to be told this by their teacher. Frankie tries telling them all the truth about Halloween and says they need to take back their holiday, but the students get the wrong idea and think it's about revenge. Cleo and Nephra arrive the next day in their daddy's palanquin, carried by the Anubis-looking beings that do all the denial's manual labor and are fine as hell. Cleo tells her dad about what's been going on, and he asks her what she plans to do about it. When she mentions people are talking about retaliating, he says talk is cheap. Nephra rubs salt in the wound, as siblings do.
That's so true, Daddy. Of course, if I were still in school, I wouldn't let them get away with it. But we can't all be me.
Then they get into an argument about Deuce. Nephra doesn't think Deuce is good enough, and their dad calms things down, but agrees with Nephra, saying Cleo deserves someone who doesn't hold her back. She's visibly hurt by this. Again, Cleo's one of the best written characters. Before she leaves for school, her dad says she needs to learn to be a leader. In front of the school, we have Deuce saying dude to everyone when he runs into Cleo, but she brushes past him, still thinking about what her family said. She goes to Gulia, who helps her send out a mass text to the other students.
Show me how to send a mass text on my eye coffin. Yes, again.
Cut to the C plot real quick, with Drac asking why Claudine missed their double date. She says it was because of what the normies did. She's very much lying.
I was lying. I'm a fucking lie.
Draculaura tries rescheduling, but Claudine makes another excuse up and runs off. I like how Drac's immediate thought is that she's never been on a date instead of, say, I don't know, she likes ghouls? Heath tries rescuing Abby from a falling book on her locker and fails spectacularly. Laguna tells Abby maybe he's embarrassed because she saved his hide earlier. Abby is confused because she comes from a culture of equality among genders. The ghouls run into Frankie and Deuce, who talk about how suspicious the students are acting lately, giving hand signals to one another as they pass in the halls. Heath is the one that lets it slip that they're planning a secret meeting. At said secret meeting, we see Cleo leading the conversation on what to do. Torelai mentions she knows the secret way into New Salem through the catacombs. When Jackson tries throwing in his support, the others are quick to not include him, which is not a smart move. Having allies to use as people who can utilize their privilege is a good tactic. They'd rather have Holt, who Jackson reminds them is unreliable. Eventually, Jackson relents and listens to music to bring forth his alter ego. Cleo takes back control of the meeting and leads them to the catacombs.
Talk is cheap, not unlike Lorelai's earrings. Hey!
Frankie and the other ghouls were spying and heard their whole plan, so they agree to follow. Again, this is during school hours. We cut to the kids in the catacombs.
Mazes. I hate mazes.
Heath shows off a rotten gargoyle egg he brought along. Not 20 seconds later, he drops it on himself. Holt impatiently runs ahead without the others.
But that's rude.
Frankie and the ghouls are hot on their trail. When the other students arrive at the high school, someone already vandalized the Normie High School when the police show up not too long after, and the monsters bolt out of there. Frankie and the others spot them running and run off to help, while the police chase after them too. The students are all hiding out as best as they can, some of them still on the run.
China shop.
When they meet back up, Manny is the one who asks if maybe Holt got there first, but the others are quick to come to his defense, even Abby chiming in that it doesn't matter because the police will think the monsters did it no matter what. As sirens approach, they get invited into a normie party. The normie inviting them in, Chad, thinking they're in costumes. At first, Cleo is horrified, but Deuce talks some sense into her. Some of the others just want to get back at them still. Frankie runs into Claire, who also isn't in a costume, but she has a reason at least. She's just not into that kind of stuff.
Whoa, sick costumes. You guys must really love Halloween.
We then get an iconic dance from Chad. The party is bumping and everyone is starting to let their guard down when the twin jocks show up and introduce Lilith Van Helscream, daughter of the famous monster hunter. I really like her design, screams villainess. She's there to monologue a bit and threaten to find monsters, but then Heath ignores Abby and eats something spicy and sets off his flames, causing a scene and revealing their identities. Then Lilith says something interesting.
Monsters! I knew it! You know you're not supposed to be on our side of town.
They're not supposed to be on their side of town, almost like there is legislation or something in place to reinforce these arbitrary rules. Makes you wonder. The two groups exchange threats, but Chad talks things down. Lilith still doesn't trust them, of course. Then Claire comes through as the voice of reason.
Everybody chill. This party was like super lame before the monsters showed up. You shouldn't be afraid of them, you should thank them.
But a commotion outside distracts everyone. The police have Holt, and the normies learn that he vandalized their school, but he says he was framed. When Lilith snitches to the cops, the monsters take off. Holt is taken to jail where they confiscate his headphones, and the police don't realize he's changed into a normie. The next day, Miss Bloodgood reprimands the students for going into town and stirring up monster-normie relations. At the police station, an officer notices Jackson and asks what happened. Jackson lies through his teeth. The officer lets him out and drives him to the normie high school. At Monster High, the students are in detention with Mr. Hackington. They're all in disagreement over who is to blame and how they should have gone about things. Cleo gets a call from her dad and Nephra. Nephra is laughing and her dad is proud of her for standing up for what she believes in. Then he advises her to break up with Deuce, which she does almost immediately. With Jackson, he's blending in no issues, realizing that he won't be picked on for being a standout because he's not a monster currently. When the twin jocks harass him, Claire comes to his defense. She's giving Major Lydia Dietz vibes. Lilith is handing out flyers with Holt's face on it. Back at Monster High, Drac tries setting up Claudine for speed dating and she is not happy about it. Drac pressures Claudine into giving it a chance, which, like, I understand she's trying to get Claudine out of her comfort zone, but you shouldn't pressure your friend like that. And when Claudine snaps at her, I totally understand where she's coming from.
Stop! I don't want to talk to you right now.
At Normie High, Jackson freaks out when Chad pulls out his phone and headphones for Jackson to listen to their favorite band, Toxic Crimson Dancer. He destroyed Chad's phone
It doesn't even drop. Hey! What's the deal?
Jackson, what's your damage, dude?
and tries apologizing for it and blaming it on a fake condition.
I was lying. I'm a fucking lie.
Suddenly the PA system comes on and starts playing the school's band, and Jackson runs off as he transforms into Hulk, only Lilith seeing the truth. Meanwhile, Normie High gets vandalized again. The news is reporting possible mob justice if the sheriff doesn't get things under control. At Monster High, news has spread and they believe it's Hulk behind it again. After talking to an imaginary Nephra, Cleo decides to make the situation all about her by saying she's been in contact with Hulk, who has more planned. She says to keep an eye out on his Critter account, which, like, the irony of a Twitter parody being at the center of spreading disinformation. Anywho, Frankie tells Deuce, Laguna, and Abby they need to stop Hulk and go to Ghoulia for help tracking him. It reveals he's at Normie High, which we immediately cut to. The twin jocks are there recording fake monster propaganda with Lilith. Then they spot the ghouls going into the school and looking for Holt. But instead they find Jackson in the janitor's closet. Then in burst Lilith and the police, where she outs Jackson as a monster, which, like, not cool, dude. Boo! The ghouls get in more trouble with Bloodgood, who hands out more detention and threatens expulsion. Then she gets a call and turns on the news to see the sheriff inciting a lynch mob in front of the Normie school. They even pull out the execution device they plan to use.
We got back to the true meaning of this holiday, putting monsters in their places.
Bloodgood isn't allowed to intervene, as it could make things worse. Rebecca quickly spreads the news around school. Cleo blames herself for this. Claudine goes off on Drac for trying to change her.
I don't need to change anything, okay? I'm perfectly happy. Yeah, you seem thrilled.
Back in detention, the ghouls wonder what they can do. Frankie suggests asking Claire and Chad for help. The others aren't sure, but she says they need some normie allies. Abby thinks of a plan to get Frankie to the normies.
Gotta go! Just to be clear, he's not part of the plan.
Frankie sneaks out of detention and heads to Normie High. There, we see the twin jocks are excited for the execution, but Lilith seems to be having second thoughts. Frankie braves the halls of the school and its bigoted student body to approach Claire and Chad and ask them for help. She tells them to meet her in the catacombs and bolts as the police arrive. The police have the area secured. No monster can show their face in New Salem, but Claire and Chad show up to meet the ghouls anyway. Frankie says she thinks someone set Jackson up, and has Claire and Chad tail Lilith and her goons to see what they're hiding. They find a duffel bag of evidence that Lilith and the twins set up Jackson.
You raggedy bitch.
But that's only half the plan. They still have to find out who was behind the Critter account. Ghoulia helps with this part. They find the post came from an old computer in the library, so they check security footage. Which, like, there are cameras in the school. I have so many questions, with the first being why. But on the tape, they find out it was Cleo behind the posting. Next, Lilith and Cleo get notes
I know what you did this Halloween.
telling them to go to the halfway point in the catacombs.
Can you meet me halfway?
There, the two immediately begin bonding over how similar they are. Then Frankie interrupts them, telling them to admit to what they did, and for them to go to the sheriff to explain things, like going to the police ever resulted in anything good. They do, and the sheriff is not moved at all by their confessions. He still plans to go forward with the execution. The ghouls and normies think of another plan to save Holt. That night, trick-or-treaters arrive at empty homes. Apparently everyone in town went to the lynching on the hill. But when the process begins, the normies begin faking monster attacks to distract the police. Frankie and Abby sneak around the machine, and Frankie shocks it and it falls silent. Abby freezes and smashes the restraints as the police close in and they flee. Abby helps Holt and Frank get away as she takes care of the police. Abby said ACAB. Then Rebecca helps Holt and Frank evade a police chase and gets them safely into the sewers. With the normies on the hill, they lead the mob towards Monster High. Frankie and Holt run through the catacombs as the normies arrive at Monster High, empty except for Heath, who distracts and leads the mob into the catacombs into the Hall of Halloween. Suddenly the lights come on and the outfits find their respective owners, who stand posed on the stairs, and Frankie welcomes everyone. When the crowd wonders how they could invite them to a party, Lilith comes forward and confesses to everyone that she was behind the pranks. Also, just want to point out that Lilith's eyes match Cleo in this outfit, and now I can't stop shipping them. Anyway, Frankie and the others tell the normies they're more alike than they think.
Be yourself. Be unique. Be a monster.
He said it! He said it!
They agree to party as the police arrive and try to shut things down. Then, the normies all come to the monster's defense, using their normie privilege as a shield. This causes the cops to give up and just join the festivities. Claudine tells Draculaura that she's been weird because she's scared of dating. Drac understands where she's coming from. Then she spots Edward, Thad, Drac's cousin, and instantly falls for him. Jackson and Claire sorta get together. Don't worry, this has no weight in future movies. Also, instead of learning and growing out of his insecurities, Holt gets to save Abby from a falling ice statue, and now the boys cheer him on. What a dumb message to waste our time with. Cleo and Deuce get together. She's on the phone the whole time, so her dad and Nephra witness the whole thing, and her dad is not happy. She doesn't even bother hanging up, just leaves the call going on as her and Deuce go to dance. This moment with Heath and the twins is hella cute. We also get a final shot of everyone dancing, and for some reason Andy is there, twice, at the same time. Anyway, one more shot of the ghouls in their fits, and then credits roll. So I like this, no surprise. I like when they do holiday specials. I eat it up every time. This is no exception. Except with the Claudine and Heath plotlines, those were handled very poorly, no excuse, and they wasted our time, honestly. Even the racism, the main plot, is handled better, and that's saying a lot when you solve a lynch mob with a party. The outfits for this one were amazing as always, very extravagant, very it drew from their monster heritage in a lot of fun ways, like Cleo's cape and Frankie's big skirt with the stitching. But my favorite overall is Abby. She just looks so delicate and soft in the dress. My least favorite is probably Frankie, but not by much. I really like everyone's look. They're all 5s in my book. That's all I have to say though. Catch you all in the next one when I recap Scaris, City of Frights. The first time we get to see a real world location in Monster High. Please consider giving the video a like, commenting your thoughts below, and subscribing if you haven't already. Bye!
Bye!